Hello and welcome to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter Lavelle. In a sharp reversal, Donald Trump has decided to attack Syria. It would seem fighting Islamic State is not his top priority now. The consequences of this decision could be dire. Is this a war Trump can win? Cross-talking Trump's war, I'm joined by my guest here in Moscow, Mark Sloboda. He's an international affairs and security analyst. We also have Dmitry Babich. He is a political analyst with Sputnik International. And in London, we cross to Marcus Papadopoulos. He is editor of Politics First magazine. All right, gentlemen, crosstalk rules in effect. That means you can jump in anytime you want, and I always appreciate it. Marcus, let me go to you first in London. What accounts for this dramatic reversal? Only a few days ago, we had the Secretary of State, we had the American envoy to the United Nations saying the Syrian people can decide their own fate. Now, Donald Trump, only in office for a few weeks, has a war on his hands. How do you account for this? Because one could say he is sold out to the deep state. He's sold out to the intelligence community to keep his job. Go ahead, Marcus.
Only a fool would have really believed that the Americans had given up on their objective of trying to overthrow the Syrian government. And let's not make any excuses, no apologies for Donald Trump. He is the President of the United States of America, and he has attacked Syria. And his attack on Syria is irrefutable evidence that, like his predecessors, he has utter contempt for international law. And like his predecessors, he will have no moral compunction in using military force, illegal military force, to achieve American geostrategic objectives in tandem with supporting Islamist terrorists. And I think it's very clear that the Americans are now helping ISIS, because when this base was attacked in Syria, what happened shortly after? ISIS began attacking it. So no excuses for Trump.
No excuses.
Let's support the Syrian government.
And let's say the truth here. Dima, I think it's fair to say that the Islamic State, ISIS, has an air force. It's the American Air Force right now in Syria.
Well, unfortunately, that is true right now. But I'm sure, a lot of liberals in Russia are now poking fun at the media and at the government, saying that, look what your favorite Trump is doing. Well, I mean, we never changed our positions. Right. It was Trump who changed his position. Let me quote what Trump wrote on Twitter in 2013 when President Obama was preparing to attack Syria. He wrote, again to our very foolish leader, do not attack Syria. If you do, many very bad things will happen.
Okay, all of us here have all 13 of those tweets here. Thank you, Mark, for sending it to everyone. We could read this all through the program, but we won't. Mark, what explains for this reversal, Or was it just a deflection to get this all in line?
This was 2013 Trump sending a message to his future self, pleading with him not to do this. I think we have to read a lot of domestic politics into what has happened this week. We saw earlier in the week, we saw the Trump administration suddenly, not that it is their right to do so, but saying that Assad could stay and that his fate would be decided in elections and that their focus was going to be solely on ISIS. And this came out of Tillerson, this came out of Trump, this came out of Nikki Haley. Within 48 hours, all around the events in this one Syrian town of Khan Shaykhun, all of this went 180 degrees.
Though we have no evidence of who perpetrated this chemical weapons attack. We have no evidence.
More than that, no evidence. More than it's just no evidence. What the mainstream media is not telling you is that Khan Shaykhun, since 2014, has been an al-Qaeda stronghold, right? The Pentagon at least admitted that the Syrian government bombed al-Qaeda, but they called it an al-Qaeda hospital. Okay. I guess al-Qaeda's running charities now. And we heard no evidence that did not come from activists on the ground. This is activists who are operating freely in al-Qaeda-occupied territory.
So no investigation, just active. Marcus, what I find troubling, and I hope I'm wrong here, is this has also a lot to do with Iran and Russia in Syria right now. This is a showdown here. Everybody's getting their ducks lined up here. I wouldn't be surprised as the fracas continues. This is not a one-off thing that they will. Once you do it, you have set a precedent. You will continue down this path here. We also also have another regional player, Israel and Hezbollah. This is going to get very, very messy, and it's going to get extremely violent. And you know what, Marcos? All these wars in this century that the U.S. has fought in the Middle East, there's never been a quote-unquote victory. Donald Trump says we don't win anymore. He's not going to win this one either. Marcus, go ahead.
Can I first of all say, Peter, quite frankly, I don't care what Donald Trump said in 2013. I care about the decisions he's making today. Because during that presidential election last year, he said Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton were awful people. Well, now he regards them as good people and people he may need as a port of call during his presidency. Let's just focus on what he's doing as president. Now, in regard to Trump's attack on Syria, there's two big questions. What next? Will there be follow-up attacks? Will the American Air Force start to attack Syrian military installations? Will they try and impose a no-fly zone? Was it a one-off? We don't know. The other big question, and this is critical, absolutely critical, is Russia's response. Because there is no point in Russia merely condemning the attack and saying it was illegal. We know that. Russia has to respond with firm action to ensure that its Syrian ally, the Syrian government, remains in power, and Russia's credibility is also at stake here, because if Russia does not take firm action, then other countries won't trust Russia.
Okay, that's the reason why I asked you the question that I did, you know, including Iran and in Russia here. Mark, you said we will be disappointed. Follow up.
Russia is not going to respond militarily to this attack. They are going to hope to de-escalate the situation. They are probably going to increase their military footprint in Syria. I would hope that Iran is going to do the same as a deterrent. They've already announced that they're going to improve Syria's air defense. They've condemned it as an aggression, an egregious violation of international law and the UN Charter, and they've called for an emergency meeting of the Security Council. But I think that is where Russia's response is going to end. Trump has played a gambit here and has presented him as what he may well be, as someone unpredictable, what is known as the madman gambit. They don't know. He's turned on 180 degrees on a dime, and they don't know if they escalate the situation where it will go with him.
This is the point here, Dima, okay? Marcus is absolutely right. We have to be focused on the here and now. But during the campaign, no more foreign wars, okay?
Exactly.
It comes no regime changes. We hear Assad can stay, as if the United States and its allies have a right to say anyone can stay or go. And now we have this here. I mean, Mark's right, this unpredictability thing here. But if we see an enhanced footprint for Iran and Russia in Syria, and we have an unpredictable man in the White House, that's a pretty toxic brew.
Well, I would say that all of the U.S. foreign policy has been unpredictable in the last few years, and it stays unpredictable. And I think in this situation, everyone is going to be the loser. If certain people in the United States, including Senator McCain, who suddenly became Trump's supporter, if they believe that Assad will just surrender and the people around him will surrender, no, because these people know that there is no way for them to emigrate to Europe. They know that they will be destroyed by the Islamists if they come to power. So it's going to be a long, messy fight.
Yeah, it wasn't just McCain. It was the entire neocons, MSNBC, the entire establishment suddenly donned red caps again, make hegemony great again.
Marcus is right that Russia will have to take tough decisions which Russia doesn't want to take. But on the other hand, we see that Trump basically surrendered. He surrendered to what we call the deep state, and I think that was a mistake, because if he thinks that these people now being exposed as liars, that whole story about Russian connection of Trump is a lie. We see it now.
Let me go to Marcus.
It's not the first time that they have been exposed.
There's been the strike, okay? I have every reason to believe, I think we all have every reason to believe there will be more. And now he cannot stop if the scenario being presented on this program is true. He's already done it, and there will be pressure on him to continue. In the second half of the program, we're going to talk about if he succeeds or not. But he really has limited his options by this very, very rash decision. Go ahead, Marcus.
Well, Dimitri, you really need to support your assertion that Donald Trump has surrendered to the deep state. And if you are not going to support that with concrete evidence, then don't make that comment in the first place.
I will.
But yes, I think that America now has a serious foothold in Syria, and we really just don't know what is going to come next. But we should also take into consideration that Trump has also been prosecuting another war in the Middle East, not so far away from Syria, in Yemen. Let's not forget that the Obama administration at the end of last year suspended all American arms supplies to Saudi Arabia because of Yemen. But Trump has lifted that and is now supplying plentiful amounts of weaponry to the Saudi government. And of course, he's increased the drone attacks there. So I really do fear, Peter, that now the Americans have taken this decision. There's going to be more of it. And we really need a Russia that is going to step up to the plate and take decisive action.
You know, Mark, you know, Donald Trump, who is well known, actually made a lot of his money not from real estate by selling his name. Is this what's happened here? The deep state is just going to rebrand American foreign policy with Donald Trump's face on it? Because this is what it seems to be here. It doesn't seem to be his. He doesn't have a policy. The deep state does, and his face is on top of it.
Yeah, I think this is exactly what happened in the past week. I think we did see a full-on Donald Trump surrender to the deep state. I never expected him to beat them or even to fight against them forever, but I did expect him to fight against them for a little bit longer, if only because of his ego and obstinacy.
He gave up Flynn. He gave
up Flynn first, right? Then, in the hours before this attack, he removed Bannon from the National Security Council, which the new NSA advisor McMaster's wanted. That's his ideological brainchild off of there. He he allowed Nunes, the chairman of the House, the new House Un-American Activities Committee 2.0, to recuse himself, which exposes him even further to the witch hunt. And now he has this 180 degrees on Syria.
Hold that thought, gentlemen. We're going to go to a quick break, and after that short break, we'll continue our discussion on Trump's war. Stay with RT. Welcome back to Crosstalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter LaBelle. To remind you, we're discussing Trump's war. Okay, Dima, you wanted to follow up on something Mark had to say.
I have to defend my assertion that Trump surrendered himself to the deep state, or rather to a general aggressive tone of American foreign policy. Well, first, I agree with Mark. You know, the removal of all of these people, that is important. But I have more direct evidence. You know, the article in the Washington Post just a day before the attack happened, headlined, it's an editorial, "In Trump's world, is it okay to use chemical weapons? Now we will find out." So they're blackmailing him, they're intimidating him into starting a war. They write, it's Mr. Trump's turn to decide whether to stand up to Mr. Assad and his Iranian and Russian sponsors. And let me remind you that just 2 years ago, the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons declared Syria free of chemical weapons.
Of the area that the Damascus government had control of. Okay, that's what's important here.
Peace Committee.
Hey, let me get Marcus. Go ahead. I saw you nodding your head in disagreement, so go right ahead.
Come on, Dimitri. That's not evidence you put forward. I have made the point since last year that Trump is an opportunist, and an opportunist will say anything to make you support him or to make him to support you. So let's just discard that. And I can counter what you're saying by simply saying that he appointed James Mattis as Defense Secretary. He is vehemently hostile towards Russia. He's appointed Nikki Haley as the American ambassador to the UN, who's vehemently hostile. He's appointed Mike. Yes, she is. He's appointed Mike Pompeo as the director of the CIA, who's very hostile. So let's just take that into consideration. But the real tragedy of this attack is that the Syrian army, the Syrian military, has been fighting Islamist terrorism for 6 years, and now it has been attacked by America. Donald Trump gave the order to kill Syrian soldiers who were fighting for all of us.
Let me ask you this, Marcus. The part two of what's happening here right now. What is the end game? A black flag over Damascus? We've said this on this program for years. What is the end game? This is the problem I have with these forced regime changes. They never have an outcome that is realistic. Okay, we'll make it up as we go along. That is, again, a recipe for failure. And I want to quote again the sitting president of the United States. We don't win wars anymore. How in the world is he going to win this one? Because I think he can't. No one can. Go ahead, Marcus.
Well, Peter, that is a terrifying prospect, what you said about a black flag flying in Damascus, because if that happened, then the Islamist terrorist threat, not just to the region, but to the entire world, would increase tenfold. Yes, it is a very, very dangerous situation, and we are seeing Trump making similar threats to North Korea. The world is becoming more dangerous, but in the context of Syria, it is absolutely crucial that Russia takes decisive action, that Iran takes decisive action, and that we need to keep on saying on Crosstalk and RT in general the truth, that every single day, 24/7, the Syrian army is fighting for our survival against these murderous, repugnant Islamist terrorist groups who are backed by Trump, backed by Erdogan, and backed by the Saudi royal family. We have to keep on relaying that point, and we can just hope that Russia will really take serious action now.
Dima, what I really want to know, I mean, and I want to go to Marcus. Mark was in the military. I mean, what is the plan here? I mean, Assad's going to walk away. It's not about Assad. It's not about an individual. It's about the kind of government that is going to be in Syria, a secular government that is multi-confessional, that it will not allow terrorists from outside to take over. It's just as simple as this. What do they think they can replace it with? Go ahead.
The problem with the Western plans over the last few years is that they are not realistic. They cannot possibly be fulfilled, but these guys still insist on them being fulfilled. You know, Ukraine was supposed to be a model for Russia. They wanted to throw out Yanukovych, make a nice, affluent, democratic country there, of which Russians would be jealous and Russians would topple Putin. That plan didn't work. It couldn't work.
It was a silly plan, if anyone believed that.
In the same way about Assad, they think that they can topple him, replace him with their loyalists, somehow prevent the Islamic State from taking Damascus. That is not realistic. That's not going to happen. But I have to make my own prediction about what Marcus said. I think Russia will again apply to international public opinion. And that has been made by the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov. Russia keeps reminding people of what happened just recently. The Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons received Nobel Peace Prize in 2013.
Okay, you're talking about this chemical attack.
Mark, you know,
what the Trump attack sets a very dangerous precedent, because now they can have their proxies. Oh, my goodness, another chemical attack. Then there must be a response. They've opened the door to blackmail, to a slippery slope here. Anytime al-Nusra needs some help, just throw in some sarin there and call the White House and give them the GPS coordinates.
Yeah, they've set the president on two scores. One, that they can directly attack the Syrian government, right? That changes what the Obama administration's sole resort to proxy war. So it's opening up a new vector of leverage in Syria. And certainly this won't be restricted to the United States, because the Erdogan regime in Turkey is salivating at the thought. They're already talking about no-fly zones, expanding their euphemistically named Operation Euphrates Shield, and so on. And the Saudis would like into this as well. But it also sets a precedent on the ground for al-Qaeda. And let's have a moment of honesty. Referring to Western experts, the entirety of the rebel field is dominated by an al-Qaeda umbrella. They are by far, number-wise, them and their sidekick jihadis, Ahrar al-Sham, supported by the Saudis and the Turks. But this creates a kind of signal. If al-Qaeda would like air support, they simply fake a gas attack, and the outcry of international opinion will demand Trump's action on this. They've already established this in the Golan Heights with Israel. Whenever they want al-Qaeda wants an attack on the Syrian government forces, they simply lob a mortar across the border into Israel-occupied Golan Heights.
Which is better than a tweet,
and
right?
Israel has the excuse, oh, Syria can't control their own territory, and then they respond with airstrikes and cruise missiles on Syrian government forces.
Marcus, you know, I'm a trained historian, and I look at the map of Syria, I look at its landmass, and I look at the number of foreign players. Most are not invited there, some are. And I have to tell you, my friend, I worry. I have this image of August 1914 in my mind. It's the airspace is get pretty crowded. I cannot imagine under any circumstances the government in Damascus is going to surrender its airspace because of what Donald Trump wants. And
they already have.
Well, yeah, but they're not going to do it. We're in a very dangerous situation where a mistake or an intentional provocation can turn everything upside down in a country that has had everything turned upside down for 7 years.
Yes, we're back to some of the hottest episodes of the Cold War, and that is a real threat to global peace and security, that accidentally, through misinterpretation, there could be a World War III between Russia and America, and of course a World War III between those two countries, the two superpowers, could easily spiral into a nuclear war. So I agree with you, Peter. I'm very concerned about what's happened in Syria. I'm very concerned about what Trump has been saying about North Korea, what he's been saying about Iran. But at the same time, let's not forget the Syrian army is on the offensive in Syria. It has the advantage, and most of the population lives in areas controlled by the Syrian army. Most of the Syrian population, actively or passively, support President Assad. They support the Syrian government. So it's not going to be easy for Trump. You know, he undoubtedly, there will be more American military attacks, but he's not going to get what he wants so easily, because he's going to be up against millions and millions of Syrians. And as I can only keep on reiterating, Russia is not going to surrender Syria. Syria is Russia's eyes and ears in the Middle East. And because of Syria, Russia has been making good contacts in Libya and in Iraq as well.
Right. Dima, ultimately, this is a test, and it's multifaceted. I mean, obviously, you know, this is going to be interpreted by some people as that Trump is getting not tough on Assad, he's getting tough on Russia, is something that he probably wants people to say, considering this fake Russiagate that has been promoted for the last few, almost half year right now. I mean, this is a test of Russia. This is what people are going to applaud Trump for doing. It's risky, though.
Well, it's risky, and I think Trump may win something in the short term. I mean, he accuses...
well, maybe he won't be impeached, huh? Okay.
Well, I mean, the people who started all of this Russiagate story will be exposed as complete idiots. You know, our agent is bombing our planes in Syria. What kind of agent is he? But on the other hand, in the long term, he is going to lose, because I think the deep state, you know, the ultra-liberals, they will not let him live in peace. They will continue trying to replace him simply because they never reconcile themselves to defeat.
This is my theory, that you know, they are happy that Trump has done this, but they're going to double-cross him. They're going to double-cross him, okay?
Oh, yeah. I think you underestimate the spin the media and the neo-McCarthyites will put on this. Trump is doing this to placate the deep state. He doesn't have any ideological designs on Syria. He doesn't care about Syria, but he's happy to hand it to them.
But they want him to hang himself,
They want him to hang himself, and they will resuscitate these neo-McCarthyite charges against him as necessary if they don't get further escalation in Syria. But I think when we're talking about this, we keep making references to decisive Russia response. We have to be aware that the Russian expeditionary force in Syria is really fairly small. It is quite modest. And surrounding Syria is Turkey, which at least on paper has a very large NATO-equipped military.
Second largest army in the
large U.S. forces all around the region. Turkey, Iraq, down into the Gulf, some of the largest U.S. military and Iraq bases, and there's also Saudi Arabia. Russia and Iran is quite distant. Russia cannot engage in a great coward conflict in Syria against the United States and its foes directly without its expeditionary force.
But you know, Mark, when I look at, we have to end on this, when I look at all of the conflicts in the U.S. has pursued in the Middle East, they've always had overwhelming force, but they still lose. Okay, that's all the time we have. Many thanks to my guests here in Moscow and in London, and thanks to our viewers for watching us here at RT. See you next time, and remember, crosstalk rules.
I love you.